the final optimization of the Singularity simulation. Now, the brain is performing simulations all the time. Your brain might perform a simulation of other people's reactions before you say something to make sure that you don't, embarrass yourself, or you might be playing volleyball and your brain will be predicting the trajectory of the volleyball, or in other words, performing simulations in your brain. You could say you exist in a simulation because your brain is simulating reality by using just the input data of your senses. The brain is very familiar with simulation, and many people have run simulations on computers too. Now, the idea is, rather than having to construct a simulation for each thing you want to simulate, you have one Singularity program that can simulate any query that you give it. Or for example, here's a possible simulation query. What's the most efficient construction of a fusion reactor? If you gave this text to something like ChatGPT, it'll probably just give you a list of details and problems that you might want to solve, but it won't be able to actually give you a blueprint, a construction, and it won't be able to test that construction to determine what its efficiency is. Now, if you give this query to a human, for example, a human who is experienced in fusion reaction engineering, that human might give you what their current best idea for the most efficient construction is. But if you wanted that human to give you an actual number of how efficient that construction would be, the human would either need to create the construction in physical reality and see how well it performed, or that human would need to program a simulation and do it that way. Now, a Singularity, the idea here is you should be able to give it any text and it'll be able to simulate that. It should be able to solve this problem if it's truly a Singularity. So here's another simulation query. Simulate all possible inventions in the future of society to determine the future technological landscape of our civilization and the best way to get there. Now, what I've done is I've taken this simulation query and attempted to simulate it within my own brain to figure out to answer this question, and I think I've got a pretty decent answer. So feel free to pause the video and simulate this query within your own brain to figure out the most efficient way to take the technological landscape of society to the final level and how exactly it's going to get there. So given the assumption that we have a working Singularity, so scenario 1 is kind of a Death Star. So basically what you do is after you've performed the simulation query and figured out the most efficient construction of a fusion reactor, what you want to do is you want to transport that fusion reactor onto a structure that is orbiting Earth, such as the International Space Station, and you transport this thing up there, and now you basically engineer a station such that it can accept new matter and organize it, and essentially any matter that would exist on the station would be able to carry its own weight. So you send this spaceship to the asteroid belt, and the only fuel you need is water and lithium. That exists in the asteroid belt. So you have a bunch of fuel, and you basically eat all the matter in the asteroid belt, and your spaceship would have a system of organizing the matters. So it would, important metals it would incorporate onto the ship, and if maybe there's some useless matter, it would kind of just throw it away because it's taking up unnecessary weight. And then you basically gather up all the matter, and now you have this clump, this system of matter that can self-organize, and then you can basically do whatever you want with that. You can basically at that point, if you got into that stage, you basically win. You can now go on to collect all the matter in the solar system. You can maybe make a Death Star. You can make a Dyson swarm, which is a bunch of a more energy efficient way of fusion, because you're using the sun's fusion rather than having to make a fusion reactor of your own. If there's problems with scenario 1, we might have to go on to scenario 2, which is a little bit more sticky, but essentially the idea is we have enough energy on the planet in terms of like nukes to propel and change the trajectory of asteroids to crash them onto Mars. So what we would do is like essentially you find an asteroid that you want and you just probably cover it in some sort of tarps and material and maybe like put something in it to basically mitigate the debris, and then you detonate a nuke in an angle that you're very precise, and you have like a bunch of precise math, and you essentially crash, and you change the trajectory so slightly of the asteroids to crash into Mars, because it's not actually, you don't actually have to put that much energy into it because it already hugs the orbit of Mars. Like as long as you slightly, hit it this way, eventually it'll, if you've done your math correctly and highly accurately, you can just crash onto Mars. So basically, in terms of energy, you take like an asteroid called 3554, a moon. It's 10 to 13 kilograms, worth $20 trillion worth of metals. So that's like a lot of metal. And then you take a bomb like the Star Bomba, the largest nuke ever dropped on Earth, gives you 10 to the 17 joules. So that's far too much energy you would need to like change the trajectory of this asteroid. So basically, if you've simulated this within the Singularity, the most efficient way to transfer this energy into the asteroid to change its trajectory onto Mars, basically what you do is you crash them all into Mars as much as you can, and then you transport a group of humanoids onto Mars, and then those humanoids make factories to make a bunch of copies of themselves, and then those humanoids can like build spaceships to transport the humanoids back onto Earth, and then now you have a bunch of humanoid robots. They can like do any jobs for you, build megastructures in space for you. So that's scenario 2. So these are the two scenarios I have. Once you create a singularity, what's the future technological landscape? And here's another simulation query that I've done in my own head and tried to figure out of what are the most relevant future technologies made possible by a technological singularity. So number 1, which we've already talked about, is removal of scarcity, free labor. You can put this singularity into a humanoid robot, and now all of a sudden this humanoid is probably going to be more skilled, more intelligent than a human, and cheaper, because all you need to do is like pay for the energy to use it. Also, you have to like actually build the humanoid robot, but basically you have free labor. You remove scarcity altogether because everyone is billionaire all of a sudden. This one is crazy. Digitization of consciousness, which is suddenly made possible with Singularity that can simulate engineering, is you basically tell the Singularity to figure out a way to replace any arbitrarily small like chunk of brain matter with a digital copy that can be digitized. I argue it should be physically possible to replace one chunk of brain matter with a copy that performs all the same exact processes, and then you just do it one chunk at a time, and then when you're done, you've essentially converted the entire brain into a copy of itself that can be digitally represented in like ones and zeros. And once you can represent a consciousness with just a computer with a bunch of ones and zeros, you can do a bunch of awesome things with your consciousness, like change all the numbers, and like turn your pain down to 0 or something, and turn your happiness to the max or something. Or better yet, you can send your consciousness to like a universe that's like much better than ours. If you want to live in a universe that's better than physical reality, well, you can live in any universe you can imagine. So like metaverse stuff, or like the anime Sword Art Online, you should take a look at that one. Another technology that people talk about is nanotech, basically like machines that are so small they're like the size of a cell. There's a lot of crazy stuff you could do with nanotech, like medical. It should be able to revolutionize medical and cure diseases that were previously uncurable, but it also could maybe make you invincible or invisible. So what you do is not just the brain, but you convert the entire mass of your body into a new, maybe structure composed of nanotechnology, a bunch of individual pieces that can essentially allow you to morph into like whatever you want. And also, maybe if you were in danger, you need to go invisible. You just disperse all of the nanotech bots, and they're so tiny that they're invisible. And now basically you have become invisible and probably invincible as well, because you can maybe figure out a way to disperse your consciousness through many different parts, so that even if like your body dies, your consciousness is still has backups and redundancies elsewhere. So like, a bunch of crazy stuff, nanotech. It's cool, I guess. And then I guess one of the last things I'll talk about is planetary monsters in a black hole engine. So this is kind of like scenario 1 type of thing, where you've created this black hole, this accumulation system of matter that can accept new matter and engineer new matter into itself. I call it kind of a planetary monster. So it would eat all the matter that it can. It might eat Mars or something. Maybe we'll feed it all of the matter in the solar system, and basically as long as it can, organize that matter, you have this huge planetary monster. Eventually what you want to do is you want to take this thing and you want to tell it to collect all the matter within the galaxy, and then this allows you to maximize your efficiency. And maybe what we could do is, probably once it has all this matter, what it's going to look like, it's going to have a core, right? And it might have a bunch of cores, like it might have a bunch of stars that are surrounded by, solar panel type things. And then it might have a core of black holes where it, stores all its matter. And then essentially what you do is, the planetary monster should have more matter than its core. And then essentially what it'll do is it'll manipulate the matter around a system of orbiting black holes. And in theory, it should be able to constantly accelerate this system, this orbital system of black holes. And as long as while you're basically manipulating the matter around it to continuously accelerate it, accelerate your core to the speed of light. And then once your core is going at the speed of light, you can just kind of tag along and use its gravity to exist in its gravity. And then you can also move at the speed of light, or approach the speed of light. And then we could try to gather all the matter we can in the universe before it accelerates away from us. So yeah, that's a pretty cool thing you could do. Cool possible scenario. Who knows if that'll ever happen, but hope for the best. And then finally, I guess a matter machine. This is kind of similar to the whole idea of replacing your brain with a equivalent piece of matter that does the same thing but has other properties. You would probably first do this by creating a matter machine that can engineer any composition of matter. That would be pretty cool. I don't know how I would engineer it, but maybe the Singularity program can figure something out. So yeah, those are the 5 ideas I had about possible relevant technologies in the future made possible by a technological singularity. And yeah, so that's basically it.